Welcome to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast, the podcast so unofficial it doesn't have a home. Here's your host, from In Hindsight, Nathan Heintz. From Steelers Nation Australia, Mark Davison. And from State of the Steelers, Daniel J. Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Unofficial Steelers Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel J. This week. Alongside with me is Nathan Heintz from In Hindsight. How's it going, Nate?
Well, could be back on the show.
Yeah.
Hopefully this show, can really kind of take the stress off my shoulders since it's, tax season. And that was just absolutely just a nail in the coffin on my day, getting that situated. And so here to talk some Steelers, man, have some good conversation, and hopefully just not let my mind be on all that garbage.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I haven't even started my taxes. It's not even going to be fun when I do. But on a positive note, the Steelers are still willing and dealing. Here recently, re-signed Justin Pierre? James Pierre. There we go. I was like, man, that doesn't sound right at all.
Justin Pierre.
It's probably Justin Lane and James Pierre. Yeah. Yep. So Pierre gets re-signed. What are your thoughts? What are your initial reaction? You think that was you think he was coming back? You think that it could have gone elsewhere?
I think he's fine just having him there for depth. Kind of had him there the last couple of years. He's had to kind of start a few times. There's some things that he's done that kind of showed that he can be someone to maybe bring in on a pinch. There's also been times where he's also kind of been like, obviously there's a reason he's a depth guy. So, but it's fine. It's fine to have him in there, just part of the rotation again. And everything like that. So, nothing wrong with bringing him back on another 1-year contract.
Yeah. I think he's probably going to be a guy that's seen on the field on special teams as a gunner. He's got that speed for it. I don't anticipate seeing Levi Wallace too much, maybe on special teams. I guess he might be a guy that'll play special teams, but Patrick Peterson ain't. And if the Steelers end up getting a guy in the first round, he probably sees some special teams, but if he's a day one starter, maybe not. So James Pierre.
You keep wanting to call him Justin.
Dude, man, I'm bad with names, bro. So for those that don't know, I have another show called The Drunk Turkey Show. And on that show, we're covering all sorts of topics. And I started a worldwide conspiracy theory, because I kept calling a caller that called onto our show the wrong name. Her name was Kim, and I accidentally called her Pam. And for whatever reason, I kept getting stuck with it. And so that show ended up blowing up, getting millions of views, the whole 9 yards. And content creators were making videos saying that Kim was actually somebody named Pam that showed up on somebody else's page and some other stuff, and they were trying to connect these theories because it's a true crime podcast. So there's a lot of detectives out there that are trying to put things together that really aren't, and it's just me bad with names. Anywho,
wow,
yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, dude, yeah, that was my monthly.
I think people are taking the conspiracies and a little too far on that one.
Yeah, exactly. I explained to them, I was like, this isn't a movie. I don't have a script, y'all. And so
it's literally just calling somebody the wrong name.
Yeah, exactly. And so I have this problem. So James Pierre, I think he's going to be utilized as a special teams ace. But putting that guy to the side, the Steelers re-signed Larry Ogunjobi. They re-signed DeMonte Casey. Which one of those two do you think was the bigger re-signing?
Probably Ogunjobi, just because they didn't have him. You're looking at other guys on the defensive line that other than Leal, I guess he showed some good things. He got hurt last year, and Cam. There's really nobody else. And then you look at the market, and even at that point, it's not anything to really gravitate toward necessarily, especially at this point in time in free agency when they did re-sign Ogunjobi. So at least Ogunjobi was an impact on defense. He did have a couple injuries last year that probably set him back just a little bit, but still, he's 28, right? Isn't he 28?
Which one? Larry Ogunjobi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's 28. He's still got some years. 3-year contract is fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. He was an important part on their defensive line. You got to bring some people back. We'll see if Leal takes a step forward at all. They still could address defensive line in the draft and maybe in one of their back end 2 picks, but you need somebody in there that has been somebody that's reliable and not just relying on a guy in Leal where we ultimately don't really know what he can fully do yet. And if you draft somebody. So right. I think Ogunjobi is probably the right guy. KZ, he's good at playing in the back. He's good being a ball hawk. But you still had other options. Like KZ he wasn't a starter really last year. He played his role really well. But still, even at this point, like I still don't even think he's going to be starting next Fitzpatrick next year. I don't. So I think Ogunjobi was if I had to pick one, probably him. But I'm glad both are back, though.
So if Terrell Edmonds doesn't sign, do you think that the Steelers are going elsewhere to get a safety to pair up next to Minkah?
I think it's possible. I think you look at a guy like Brian Branch in the first round. He's a guy that's pretty versatile. There's still a couple guys on the market too, if they want to look in that way. Just with KZ, like he's just so much better as just being back there and playing center field rather than playing a position that is different than what he excels in. I think if you're going to put him in a different spot like Terrell Edmonds, I don't really see him fitting in that. That's just my opinion.
Got you. Yeah, I see in the live chat maybe Byard or
Kevin Byard would be pretty cool.
Yeah. I think there's options there. I think that the longer that Terrell Edmonds waits to resign, the lower that money that he might be able to make gets. When other guys in the safety group start coming off the board at this point, it's kind of like what happened to him last year. He waited very long and ended up with a 1-year, $2 million contract.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So the longer he waits, I think it's going to be more detrimental to his contract.
Yeah. I think he'll be back. Maybe on a 1-year contract or something. I think he'll be back.
I agree. I hope so. I think the Steelers need him. Last season, when he went down for a couple of games there, and Trey Norwood was a liability over the top. And in my opinion, the Steelers back end was hurting, and it was kind of taking Minkah out of his element. He was trying to, in my opinion, try to do a little bit too much. And that led to some uncharacteristic plays going over the top of him as well. And so, I think with Edmonds back there, I think he's a very solid Robin to Minkah's Batman. And I think that he's a physical guy that can come up front in obvious passing situations and let Kazi hang out behind him and do what he does best, right? And so, the Steelers, they picked up 2 middle linebackers as well. Elandon Roberts and Cole Holcomb. Cole Holcomb's the more athletic of the two. He's probably the Devin Bush of the tandem, if you were to look at the tandem of Devin Bush and Miles Jack, as to where Elandon Roberts is probably the bigger guy in that set. Where do you compare this tandem of Cole Holcomb and Elandon Roberts to the combination of Devin Bush and Robert Spillane with Miles Jack?
It's a lot better. I don't care what people say. Miles Jack, when he got cut, I saw people were crying about it. Who cares? He wasn't very good. All he has is his name to him. So Miles Jack, was he bad last year? No, but he wasn't the guy that was worth $11 million. So, okay. Cut him, go elsewhere. Yeah, exactly, Jared. Like he wasn't the guy that probably a lot of fans thought he was going to be. He didn't create any turnovers. He wasn't very impactful for the defense as a whole. Nobody on that inside really was. Devin Bush doesn't like to tackle. He doesn't like to tackle. He's always hesitant on the snap. He's not in the right position a lot of times. He doesn't get off blocks very well. And I like Devin Bush a lot. I did. Devin Bush was pretty good his rookie year. And he was playing pretty well going to second season before he hurt his knee. And since then, he hasn't really been the same player. And sometimes, a lot of times, guys who get hurt like that, they don't recover. Sometimes they do. But I think Devin Bush's just mindset, from what we have seen on the outside, from what he has talked about and said, it just doesn't seem like he even cares. He's just happy to be in the league. You know, I'm in the league. I'm getting paid. All right, then enjoy playing for 7 teams. Enjoy being the fourth linebacker, hardly playing, and enjoy being that then. If that's what you be, rather than being a difference maker on a team, then you enjoy that. Go ahead. So I think it's an upgrade. How much of an upgrade? We'll wait and see. But Cole Holcomb and Roberts, at least they're not afraid to tackle. At least they're not afraid to tackle. They're thumpers. They're hard hitters. They're going to do the dirty work for you. Holcomb last year was subsided from foot injury. The year before that, had a great season. I think the thing that stands out the most, though, Daniel, is that both these guys were respective defensive captains on their defenses. And that's something this team has a lot of youth to it and lacks in leadership, because it can't just be Cameron Hayward. Can't just be Kenny Pickett as your rookie quarterback, right?
Right.
So now you're bringing in 2 guys who have already led a defense. You have Cole Holcomb, who's called plays, and they're a lot more when you look at what they've done in recent years compared to what we've had. To me, from what I'm seeing, they're much more that they produce much more.
Right.
Now, are they great in coverage? Probably not. But you can still find somebody to come in and offset that. If there's somebody in the draft you want to take, maybe in the second or third round, that you like, in terms of someone you can put in there on certain passing situations if you want to bring somebody in. But at the end of the day, they're giving you something that the inside linebackers were not giving you last year.
Right.
So I am pleased with it. And I think that it probably caught a lot of people off guard in the sense of them just completely overhauling everything from the inside linebacker group. Mark Robinson's going to be in year 2. We'll really see how he comes along, but I'm fine with it. What about you?
Yeah. I think that it's an improvement. I think the Steelers weren't very pleased. The top brass. No. It starts with
Jack got benched at the end of the year. So what's that say?
Right. When you do a complete overhaul of your middle linebacker position, including the coach, Jerry O wasn't brought back. So the middle linebackers coach was also not brought back. I don't recall in the time that I've been a fan that they've done a complete overhaul in one area to this degree. You're bringing back Mark Robinson is the only returning middle linebacker at this point. They might re-sign Marcus Allen, which he's not a middle linebacker. He's a special teams player that, you have to give him a position outside of that, and he has to have a position in your offensive defense, and that just happens to be middle linebacker.
Yeah.
But to do that's crazy. And that tells you how disappointed the Pittsburgh Steelers were in that room. Now, you look at Tremaine Edmonds and the deal that he got. I think that he doesn't get that deal unless there was at least 1 or 2 other teams, occupying for
absolutely.
his.
Absolutely. I 100% believe the Steelers were interested. But Chicago had $93 million in cap room. So, of course, hey, they're going to break the bank for him.
Exactly. And so I think the Steelers helped drive that paycheck up. So they may not have gotten, the guy that they wanted initially. But I think that, like you mentioned before, Cole Holcomb, he's like a possible diamond in the rough type of guy.
Yeah. I just like his attitude, man. I just like his attitude. He's just not afraid. He's not afraid to hit you. Devin Bush was.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're 100%. And when it comes to Landon Robertson, I'm sorry, he has a couple of touchdowns to his name on offense and defense.
Yeah, he does. He had the best year of his career last year. So yeah. he's coming off a career season last year.
Exactly. And so I'm excited about this move, and the one thing that's really going to help these guys out the most is that the guys up front are going to be healthy. TJ Watt is going to be healthy. He's going to have a complete offseason to heal that pectoral. Cam Hayward was riddled with injury last season as well with the ankle. It was significant. And, he manned up and went through it for majority of the season. But he's going to come back healthy. Larry Ogunjobi started the season hurt last season. Coming into the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's reasons why he had that mega deal with Chicago also, but that fell through because he couldn't pass a physical. And so I was there in training camp and I saw him. He was on the side. He never participated while I was there, at least. And, I'm associated with Steel Curtain Network, and my associates there that were also at training camp will attest that throughout training camp, he wasn't a part of team drills. He wasn't a part of one-on-one drills. He was a part of just the very beginning, the stretching, the walking. And then he went off to the side and worked one-on-one with the trainer. And so he will have a full training camp to, under his belt this upcoming season. And so I think that's going to be huge. Plus the possibility of the Pittsburgh Steelers drafting a defensive lineman in the top 3 rounds is probably pretty high. If you look at the draft and how they've drafted up to this point in the last couple of years have been heavily offensive dominated. I think that this year is going to be different. I think it's going to be heavily defense.
That's fine. They met with the Michigan lineman twice already.
Yeah.
So yeah, that tells you a lot right there that they're definitely not just him, but probably that position that's something that they're keeping high on their draft board.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. You're right. And so I'm excited. I'm excited about what they're going to do and what they're going to bring in. I tend to think that they're still going to lean. So let's talk before we go into the draft. Let's talk about the other side of the acquisitions. And this is kind of the title of the show, the picket fence of steel.
Yeah. The picket fence.
Thank you, Steelers Freak. He called yesterday when I was on the Hangover on Steel Curtain Network. He's like, we're talking about the acquisition of the 2 guards, and he put on there the picket fence. And I was like, man, that should be their name. That's if they do well, that might be their name
for them. Real quick, definitely. Daniel, before you go on that, since we're going to talk about offense, just going to answer for we bypass Jared. Jared asked what our opinions are on saying Dan Orlovsky saying that we should sign Odell Beckham.
I'll let you answer that first.
It's a pass for me. It's a pass for me. Reason why is just because he has a lot of injury history, and I think with guys we've seen, he's honestly a headache. No matter where he goes, he's a headache. Guys always crying. There's always something going on with him, and I'd much rather them really utilize Pickens, get Deontay Johnson back going. Man, it just becomes where it's too many mouths to feed. That's what it becomes. Odell's a guy that's going to want the ball a handful of times. And that's why I have been an advocate. If you want to bring a receiver, bring one in. It's not saying you can't draft one in the 2nd or 3rd round if you want to do that, but bring one in that doesn't need the ball all the time, that can bring some type of experience to a young wide receiver group and has some physicality. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that opinion. We saw what happened last year when they had Chase Claypool. We saw Johnson. We saw Pickens. We saw Claypool always getting upset because not all of them were getting the ball. So they traded Claypool. So if you bring Odell in, who is going to want to kind of revitalize his career because he didn't play last year. He only played a couple months on the Rams, their Super Bowl season. So he's really going to want to revitalize his career. You bring a guy like that in. I just don't really see it boding well for a guy like Johnson or George Pickens in a sense, because Odell's going to want to, really rack up the stats. He's going to want the ball a lot, right? And you got a guy in Pickens who can be a top guy. You have Johnson who's shown he can be a higher end wide receiver. We know his struggles last year, but who didn't struggle last year on offense? So I don't know. That's just my opinion. What do you think?
I echo a lot of what you're saying. I wouldn't mind picking up the phone if he calls. I'll see what his number is, see what he's expecting as far as what he expects as utilization on the field. I understand that it's going to probably be a 1-year prove-it year, so he's going to want to put up some numbers.
Yeah.
And so that does become an issue. But if if he comes in with the mind thought that, hey, I do have some injury issues, it might be in my benefit if my snaps are limited.
Yeah.
If he comes in with that type of attitude and team first, I wouldn't mind bringing him on board.
I just don't really see it being realistic either. I think he's going to want to go to a team that's like probably a higher end championship contending type team, and knowing he can be their first or second option there.
Right.
Because we got Pat Freiermuth too. And we look at the season he had. He had a pretty good year last year. So
yeah.
I just think it becomes too much, man. And we see they're going to want to run the ball a lot too. So I don't see it happening.
Yeah, no, I don't see it happening either. I just think that perhaps, if he calls, nobody else is giving him a deal, and he's willing to come in humble about that. Maybe, but, not at the expense of any drama or things of that nature.
Right.
I don't know. I think he's past his prime too. I
always thought he was overrated, man.
When it comes past, his injuries and things of that nature, I think those take a toll. One of the things that made him special was his speed, and 2 ACL injuries.
It's
I don't know. It's going to be, you're absolutely right. It's going to be tough. And then for somebody that expects a certain amount of utilization,
right,
it may not be the best fit. But I wouldn't mind bringing in another receiver. I think the Steelers need one.
There's still a few guys out there that can probably maybe fill a role. Like Mecole Hardman's a guy out there. He's really fast. Jamison Crowder's still out there. I don't know. Those are just some names thrown out. Not saying that they would fit in well. Not saying that they should go after him. Just some names. Joey Weaver said what happened to Mark. Mark's still a part of it, man. He's just been he's had personal projects and other stuff too, in terms of work and stuff that he's been getting tied into. So once the season kind of comes back around, he's probably gonna.
Yeah, he'll be coming back on a couple of times here and there.
He's just kind of on a hiatus right now. He can't fit everything in. So
yeah, and I think right now his computer broke.
Did it? Jeez.
Yeah, he was in his he made a video. He was in his car, and he's like, I'm in my car because my screen doesn't work on my laptop. And he's like,
he's gonna have to do.
Yeah, so I think he said he sent it back, but it was gonna be at least a month before he'd get it back because it's still under warranty. And I'm like, oh man, that sucks.
Right.
But
DJ Clark too, I guess. I don't know what kind of money he wants. But yeah. So so you want to talk about the offensive line? That's what you're transitioning to?
Yeah, let's get into the offensive line. So
let's do it.
You have the acquisition of Nate Herbig. That was the first one, right? And they kind of gave him the red carpet treatment. He met the press. He did the interviews. Kenny Pickett called him, talked to him.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was a guy that was potentially going to be taking Kevin Dotson's position. Before we get on to the next signing, what were your thoughts of his signing first and foremost?
I was fine with it. Didn't really quite know what they thought his role was going to be, but he's been a guy that has started. He's not just someone that's just been a backup somewhere and he's going to battle for a roster spot. He's actually started. He started 11 games for the Jets. He started a lot of games for the Eagles before that. And he's a guy that's a mauler. He likes to move people. He's really good at creating space for who's running behind him. And that's something that they need. And hey, if he doesn't start, if he's your next lineman up, that's fine. That is fine. They can utilize him as well, probably in different scenarios. So even if he doesn't start, he can still get in there, be a productive guy, and whatever they have him do. He said he'd play anywhere they need him to play as well. So he offers some versatility as well that they need. But when they signed him,
do you know he snaps the ball? Has he ever played center?
I don't know if he's played center. I know both guards. I think he played center a little bit. I'm pretty sure more guard is more on his higher on his thing. I think he's played center a little bit though.
Yeah, because I was fine with it. Because that was one of the things that I thought that, when you look at Mason Cole, he was dealing with an ankle injury last year, especially towards the latter part of the year.
Yeah.
But there were times where bigger defensive linemen were pushing him back. The year before, the Steelers had Kendrick Green, a very little guy for a center, and he was getting pushed around. And so I was thinking maybe perhaps the Steelers, maybe Mike Tomlin's getting kind of tired of the pressure coming up the center and is wanting somebody that's going to not be a pushover, get somebody nasty, somebody big. I think he's 6'4", over 300 pounds. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a strong, nasty guy I think that if he can snap the ball, I think he might be some competition there for Mason Cole. And when it comes to Mason Cole, I don't think he did a bad job last season. I thought he did really, really well. But one question I've always asked myself was he doing really, really well because he was doing well, or was that because the year before we got 16 games of Kendrick Green? You know what I mean? What are your thoughts? Do you think that he could? What are your thoughts on Mason Cole? And do you think he's safe at the center position?
Well, he should definitely be the favorite. I really don't think he was really that bad last year. I think he showed some good things. The ankle injury kind of popped up here, popped up there. But having competition is always a great thing. So if Herbig maybe pushes them in the offseason, the Steelers maybe kind of put them in multiple spots to see where they like them the best at. Who knows? Who ultimately knows? It's not that Mason Cole is this lockdown center necessarily, but I viewed him as a guy that was going to be a Band-Aid until they really figured out a long-term option there. He signed a 3-year deal. He's been with the Cardinals, been with the Vikings. So this is his third team. I believe he's 26, and I like his attitude, and I'm completely fine if they want to stick with him at center again. Completely fine with that, as long as he's healthy. But if they want to use Herbig a little bit as some competition, I think that always brings out the best in really anybody. And kind of see what direction there. But if they rock with Cole, I think that's fine. I like his attitude. I think that he brought more last year than what they had in with Kendrick Green, that's for sure. So at least Herbig's a guy you can move around. You never know with injuries either. And if you're able to have that 6 lineman on your team that you can really plug in and you're not necessarily going to miss a beat, then great.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And so Saturday night, late in the evening, the Pittsburgh Steelers signed guard Isaac Seumalo, formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles, probably arguably the best guard in free agency this season, free agency season. I was excited about it. I was pretty surprised, given the fact that they had just signed Nate Herbig. Are you stamping Seumalo as the left guard, the starter come day one of training camp? Or do you think that because he was a right guard with Philadelphia, James Daniels gets moved somewhere because James Daniels also played center. Now, I don't know if he's a guy that you'd want to put in the center, but from what I remember, it was pretty dang good center as well.
Right.
And so I think they got some options there. But across the board, before we get into the Seumalo, do you have any offensive line like any of these offensive linemen that are projected to be starters? Like which ones do you have stamped as a starter that you feel fairly confident that they'll be a starter and not being replaced by pick number 17 or another free agent? Because right before the Steelers signed Seumalo, they were rumored to have been talking with Orlando Brown, offensive tackle. And so they've at least addressed, that position. And my assumption is if they're getting somebody like Orlando Brown, then that's probably a starter there. So I don't think that they're set at the starting position or the starting tackles that they have. Do you think any of these? Not. Yeah. Do you think any of these players? How confident are you in any of these players being starters come to start the season?
So James Daniels, 100%.
Right.
He's starting 100%. I think other than him, I think we can say it's likely Mason Cole is, and I think we can say it's likely Okorafor is, but I still wouldn't be surprised if Okorafor would get cut just because how they structured his contract last year, the heavy money he's making is pushed back for this year and next year.
Right.
So if there's somebody that they draft and maybe they like what Dan Moore's doing as well, maybe they put him on the other side. I've heard people say that he's a better right tackle. Who knows? We haven't seen him necessarily play there. We don't really have a lot of substance of that. But I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying I want it to happen. I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if they did it just because the money he's making, Okorafor isn't a great tackle. He's not necessarily a bad tackle either. So he's even said himself that it's possible throughout this offseason that maybe he gets cut or something. But James Daniels, 100%. Mason Cole and Okorafor, I still think are likely. Dotson's done out of the lineup. He's done out of the lineup, which is fine. The guy was a penalty machine. The guy gave up pressure after pressure. And someone said in the chat, trade Dotson for a 4th or 5th round pick. Hey, if they're able to get that out of him, then great. Maybe a team will view him as a guy that can be a good backup for them. Dotson's a good guy. Pretty sure he grew up Steeler fan, but hey, man, like other than his rookie year, he's either injured or he's just not really very good.
Right.
And that's it. Dan Moore, left tackle. A lot of people want that changed, myself included. And that's what is going to come down to, I think, the draft. You're looking at pick 17. You're looking at pick 32. There's about 5 tackles that can go in the first round.
Yeah.
So if Steelers really like a couple guys and there's an opportunity there, I wouldn't be surprised if they did that and Dan Moore's out of the lineup. See you later. So I think there's one that is 100% solidified. I think there's 2 that are highly likely, which if they are, is fine. Semalu, however you pronounce his name, I just can never get his name right. But he is going to be a starter 100%. Just depends where they want to put him at. Left tackle, I think they'll take one with their 1st or 2nd pick.
You know, going into free agency, I think a lot of people were. You're right. Going into free agency, I think a lot of people were okay with the 5 offensive linemen the Steelers had. 1 week later, how things have changed. You know, I like everybody's like, no, it's completely almost blowing up in that situation as well. I mean, when you look at the 5 starters that they had last season that were able to play all season, and now we're probably looking at maybe 3 of those guys starting again or continuing to start, you know, carrying over. That's still another 2 pieces that are being turned over. From the 2 that was the prior season. And so it's been a really complete makeup or buildup of the offensive line. Now, when you're looking at that tackle position at the left tackle, if the Steelers don't move up and they stay put out at 17, who are you thinking they get? Now, before we answer that, let me see this real quick. We got a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Shields OU 812. Dan, how did you become a Steelers fan? All right, so the story goes, my dad's a Steeler fan, but it goes a little bit further than that. So we're from Texas, and basically, long story short, my dad was the kind of guy that goes against the grain. And when he was a kid growing up in the 70s here in Texas, everybody was a Cowboys fan. And there was one team that they hated, and it was because they kept winning Super Bowls against them, and that was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so my dad decided to be a Steelers fan. And long story short, I was born into it and just loved the team. I grew up watching them. I'm a season ticket holder. I actually give away one ticket a year or 2 tickets a year to one game to see the Steelers. Last year, I gave away 2 tickets to the Steelers versus Vegas Raiders game. This year, I'm waiting to see what games are out and which games I'll be attending, and then we'll be probably giving away some more tickets to another subscriber later on this year. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. That way you're notified of that. But thank you so much for the question and the super chat. I appreciate
super chat, Shields. Thanks for tuning in, man.
So who are you thinking? Who's your thought there at 17? If the Steelers don't move, you're saying that there's 5 tackles there that you're thinking that can go in the first round. They do hold number 32.
Which is incredible. Absolutely incredible. They got that for Chase Claypool. That's insane.
That is insane, but it's also a little bit insane to think that those 5 tackles are going to last there. So what are you thinking? Where do you think they hit that position?
Well, whoops. So if they stay put at 17, I'm not going to take into account, I think they're going to trade up, trade back. No, because nobody knows that. So we are taking with what we're given here, 17-32. Now, going through all the teams where the teams are placed, you have 5 that could probably go in the first round, but it's a pretty hefty quarterback draft. So there's going to be guys that fall, not necessarily all the tackles, but there's going to be guys that fall that are probably higher end guys that teams are going to be able to get at whatever pick. So you got Paris Johnson, Ohio State tackle. He's probably the highly regarded guy from a consensual standpoint as being the top tackle. Broderick Jones from Georgia. You have DeJuan Jones from Georgia. You have Skoronski, but Skoronski is also a guy that a lot of people think or he's going to be more shifted into a guard spot than tackle. And then you have, the guy from Tennessee. Why am I blanking out his name? Donnell Wright. So there's 5 right there. And if you're the Steelers at 17, and if you have one of the tackles that are very high end on your board, then sure, go for them. I don't really see why any fan would be upset with that. Now at 32, forgot another guy, Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. There's 6. He's a guy that can go first round right at the second round as well. So since there's 6 tackles, like I think probably maybe at least 2 of them could maybe make it there to that 32nd pick, because that's a first round pick if the Dolphins weren't losers and trying to tank and just everything like that. So that would be a first round pick. But so anyway, I think I'm in the favor of going in 2 positions, 1 cornerback or 2 tackle. And it really depends who's there. It depends who's there. So you look at the Steelers targeting Orlando Brown. I think it should really tell you all you need to know. They're looking to upgrade their tackle position and that they're probably coveting it, pretty highly on their draft board. Now, who's going to be there at 17 or 32? It's kind of hard to say. But a lot of people like Joey Porter. Understandable. Devin Witherspoon. Christian Gonzalez probably going to go in the top 10. He's the highest rated corner. I've seen people say Deonte Banks at 17. Not quite sure about that. But I think at 17, I think you'll at least have out of those 6, at least 4 available there at 17. Because when you go through all the other teams that come before the Steelers, you're probably maybe looking at two teams there that, and anything can happen. Anything can happen. We've been surprised by draft picks a lot of times. But in terms of just like, if you're going through teams and really kind of look at whose teams are whatever their tackles are for whatever team you're going through, there's probably a couple before the Steelers that you could really mock to that. But I think the Steelers they'll at least probably have four of those guys at their disposal at 17. Just depends really who they like over the other. Same with corner.
Right.
If they want to draft corner. So I think ideally for me, hey, if they go cornerback and left tackle with those first 2 picks, I'm fine with that.
So
I think that's good.
Out of the tackles that you mentioned, though, is there one that you would want to get that would fit what the Steelers do?
Roger Jones would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the one so I did a prediction, right? I don't know much about college. That's more your area of expertise compared to me. But my prediction was a double dip in Georgia players, with Broderick Jones and then Kaylee Ringo, cornerback, and 32. What are your thoughts on him?
Interesting. Oh man. Well, let me say this just for everybody to chat. I'm not a college football expert. I honestly am not really a big college football guy. What's up, Mark? Glad you're tuning in, man. Can't wait till you're back on the show later on, whenever that is. So we're excited for that, man. But yeah, just want everybody in the chat to know I'm not Todd McShay. I'm not Mel Kiper. I'm not studying these guys all the time or anything. I'm really not even a big college football advocate, to be honest. I think to me, I think other than the atmosphere, who wants to watch a 70-14 football game? No, thank you. I'm good. But usually toward the end of college football season and especially toward the off season is really kind of I do digging around and stuff like that. But the only thing with Ringo, Moses, he would be a W. The only thing for Ringo is that he has been dropping a little bit, and I'm not quite sure how ready he is to play right away. I'm not quite sure how raw he is. Rather than Joey Porter, Gonzalez, Witherspoon, those guys are day one guys.
See, that's why I'm not afraid of Ringo, because you have a guy like Patrick Peterson who has a lot of similarities to him. Yeah. Patrick
they
Peterson
could do that too. They've met with him, I believe.
Yeah.
So they could do that.
And I think you look at his speed, you look at his size, and that's very similar to what Patrick Peterson has when he was coming in college. And so maybe perhaps having that guy that's had those abilities, who's had to adjust his game for a more cerebral outlook, if you have Ringo under that guy's, wing, so to speak,
Yeah.
And then he can kind of start his development and get him into that cerebral mindset while he still has the crazy athletic ability. And so those are the two guys that I put out there. There's another Georgia Bulldog that people were talking about who might fall to number 17. And he's got some legal issues.
Oh,
finish his
Jalen
pro
Carter?
day.
Jalen
Carter.
Yeah.
If he's there at 17, Steelers need help in the front defensive line.
Well, with Jalen Carter, I wouldn't really be too concerned with the pro day crap because he's just going through a lot of crap, man. He really is. He's going through a lot of crap right now with what happened with some of his teammates and stuff like that. And so that's always a tough thing to deal with. But he's very talented. I think dropping 17 spots is kind of crazy to think about for a guy that caliber. So if he's there, the Steelers will like him. And like, if they don't really take into account like that kind of the stuff he's been dealing with off the field is like necessarily a big deal and that he'd be able to kind of get into work right away and stuff like that. You know, why not? Right. Because they can, they can use that. I think it's just a question of, man, how far would he drop? Right. So that's kind of one thing there. They could always go corner as well. Like you said, with Ringo at 32, there's a couple other guys that would probably be there that have been talked about too. But wouldn't it be something, man, if Washington was on the board at 16 and took Joey Porter right for the Steelers?
Oh, dude. That'd be
wouldn't that be something?
That would be Artie Burns flashbacks.
Yeah, it really would. Let's just not reach at 17, please, for the love of God.
Yeah. If
I think one thing, though,
there.
I want to put in perspective for some people, and the Steelers get a lot of flack when it comes to drafting corners.
Right.
The corner in recent memory, Artie Burns is the only corner that they took in the first round recently. A lot of the others came in second round, third round, stuff like that. Like, I believe Cam Sutton was the third round pick, wasn't he?
Right.
I think he was third round pick. Justin Lane was third round pick. Senquez Golson, who never even played, was a second round pick. So, and the guy they really wanted was off the board. Artie Burns, we all can agree. It seemed like it was just a desperation move. They needed corner really bad that year. Their corners were terrible. And they probably just looked at, hey, this guy's got some raw talent, man. We'll try to work with it, blah, 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 whatever. But I think that's one thing, at least just for some people to think about, is that when it comes to the Steelers drafting a corner in the first round, they really only did it one time in recent years. And we know it didn't work out, but it is a pretty heavy corner class. So I think that's at least something different to think about, because we know the track record hasn't been very good, but in terms of first round talent, they haven't really invested too much into that in the first round. So just putting that out there.
Now, I think the problem when it comes to it comes with Artie Burns as well is, wasn't there a cornerback that was signed after him that ended up being pretty good? I'm trying. What year was he drafted in?
That was the 2016 draft.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So if you want to,
yeah, I'm looking it up right now.
Look that up.
Yeah, because I remember there being a couple of cornerbacks behind him that ended up getting drafted.
Brian, answer your questions. Daniel looks it up. Do I think Derek Watt will be back? Yeah, I do. I think they value him on special teams. We saw that they utilized him a little bit last year offensively. I think he'll be back, and I think that it would be completely fine if they did that, man. Yeah, it was William Jackson. Yep.
Xavier Howard was the next cornerback taken.
He was the next one after him. Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah. So, yeah, he is the one that, you went Artie Burns over Xavier Howard. But, at that time also you have to realize what people do or what they do in college doesn't always translate to the NFL. And sometimes you get those guys that pop out of nowhere that you didn't expect to be, that great. They come out of nowhere.
They do.
If they knew about it, they would be drafted earlier and there'd be no bust.
Oh, absolutely. That's how it always goes, man. Right? That's how it always goes. Mark, we appreciate it, man. We're looking forward to you being back on the show. So all you got to do is hit us up, man, whenever you're ready. Heard your computer broke or something like that. So, that's another obstacle right there, man. But going back to Isaac's Samala, however you pronounce his name. So he's been with the
Yeah.
Eagles his whole career. And this has been my favorite signing all offseason because, man, was he a special part of that offensive line last year. I believe he had an injury bug the year before, but he's been a guy that not only does he specialize in terms of his run blocking, but last year he only gave up 17 pressures and only gave up 1 sack last year. Now, I know he's also got other people around him. I know he's got Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, stuff like that. But he's still got to own his own craft and own his own assignment. And I don't really care if he played for the Eagles, who's one of the best lines. I don't care if he played for another team last year that had a terrible offensive line. Right. Don't care. If he's solidified and he's been a more highly regarded type guy and has earned that name, I don't care how good everybody else is around him. At the same time, you still have to do your part.
Yeah.
So don't know what side they're going to play him at, but man, he's going to bring some really good stuff to this offensive line. And it is something that has been absolutely missed. Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he has the ability to like problem solve very quickly.
Oh, absolutely does.
Like that's one thing that I noticed from him is that he'll be in a position where he'll see somebody doing something. Instead of just standing there, he looks to find somebody to hit. And he does. He'll, you know, there's been times where there's been like swoops and leaps and what's the word I'm looking for? Where they the defensive end and the tackle basically collide, cross, right? Mm-hmm. And he sees the crossing motion and he understands it very quickly and is able to adapt, and it's ineffective against him. There were plays where he was blocking 2 people at once. He's a big guy, 6'3", 304 pounds. Another guy with some meat on him. And so, like I said, I think that the Steelers offense wanted to get the offensive line. They wanted to get bigger. And, I think that they are. This guy,
he's got a pretty good contract himself. I mean, you look at the Eagles. The Eagles can't pay everybody. The Eagles lost a lot of guys. They retained a few people. They can't pay everybody. Steelers jump in on the opportunity. We know they've been looking at offensive line help before they signed him. He's still on the market. We're going to give him what he's looking for, give him what he wants. Instant upgrade. Absolutely instant upgrade. You can put him whatever spot. He's played in both. So whichever side they like him better in, we'll see. But he's my favorite sign of the offseason. He is somebody that this offensive line has missed since, I'd say, probably Ramon Foster.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not necessarily comparing the two in terms of who does what. I'm saying just in terms of really, because Ramon Foster was somebody where, like, he was never a Pro Bowler, but man, he was still one of the best guards in the league.
Yeah.
Like, he was still somebody that, like, was always overlooked on the line because you had Pouncey and Villanueva and DeCastro on there taking up the kind of the recognition, right? But Foster was just such, man, he just kind of really held so much of that together. Now you got a guy like this guy coming in who, sure, okay, he hasn't been named to an All-Pro, but he's still a really, really good player. And on a very talented Eagles line where a lot of other guys get a lot of recognition. So he's definitely going to bring something to this line that's been dearly missed. Brian, how optimistic about Bud Dupree are you come back to Steelers? What do you think, Daniel?
Well, before I get into that, I'm going to add one last thing.
Go ahead.
Andy Weidl was part of that Eagles team. And so, bringing Nate Herbig, bringing in Isaac Semalu, 2 guys that are, formerly of the Eagles and 2 guys that Weidl had ties with. I think it's important when you see that he's bringing in these guys. These guys probably are the guys that he sees could possibly be the guys of the present and the future. And so I think it's a good signing. It's a good pickup on both ends. And the fact that this picked up by who it was, it might be an underrated move. Just not knowing or not considering Andy Weidl also made this decision.
He's already making the stamp known, man.
Oh, yeah, for sure. To answer your question about Bud Dupree, I think it's less likely the longer it takes. I thought he would have signed by now. I think he's looking for something more. I think he's still looking to get more of a paycheck or at least an opportunity to make another paycheck down the road. I think that he understands if he comes in as that third wheel, that he's going to have some significant snaps, but they're going to be not the same amount of snaps that he had previously with his last tenure as a Pittsburgh Steeler. And so that's going to hinder his opportunity to get another contract afterwards. I think he's already 30 years old, 29. So he doesn't have much time left. Now, I think that he's a guy that wouldn't shy away from the Pittsburgh Steelers and understands, that he has a home here.
And he might need to recognize that, man. Look, you've been injured the last 2 years. You weren't productive at all in Tennessee. You might need to recognize you need to take a 1-year deal for a lesser contract and try to make the most of that opportunity. Or, hey, maybe there's a team out there that they know they can give him more opportunity there than the Steelers on a 1-year contract. But
well, I mean, he can also get an incentive-based contract where if
he could get that too. Yeah, he
6-7 sacks somewhere. Yeah. He's not probably going to have the opportunity to get that, right? Not with the Steelers. If Alex Highsmith and T.J. Watt stay healthy, and the offense is doing what they're supposed to be doing by maintaining possession of the ball in a similar fashion that we saw at the end of last season, where they were, they had won the time of possession. I think that he's not going to have very many snaps. I think that there's quite a bit of possibility here that the Steelers defense be very good, have a few 3-and-outs, and that the offense be able to maintain possession of the ball, thus, shrinking the amount of snaps for the defense in total and his portion. And so, I agree. He's not going to get he probably isn't going to get an incentive-based deal here that he feels that he is going to be capable of achieving. So I don't blame him for looking elsewhere.
Oh, no, not at all. And Bud Dupree was definitely a little bit of a late bloomer, but he still was pretty good here toward the last couple of years. And I'm sure probably people in the locker room would like to see him back. Yeah. Now, I've seen a couple people on Twitter say, and Mark, you messaged me about this because he saw what I said. I saw a couple people on Twitter crying, just tear city, dude, just absolutely tear city, crying about, the Steelers don't make the splash play, no Edmonds, no Darius Slay. Who cares? Really, if you think about it, a lot of us did want to see a Tremaine Edmonds, but other than him, who else was ultimately there in terms of a splash play type guy for the Steelers to sign? This free agent market didn't really have tons of names on it. This market this year was really a lot of guys that were quality players, but they're not like the all-pro, the multiple-time Pro Bowl type guys. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. So, sure, I would love to see Tremaine Edmonds, but look what the Bears gave him. The Steelers weren't going to give him that. The Steelers went on Orlando Brown. The Bengals gave him a better contract. It is what it is. Right. Steelers still have been aggressive, more aggressive than they were last year. You see new management starting to kind of put their own stamp on this team a little bit, and they upgraded and covered positions of need that needed covered. If you're in a situation where maybe you need one guy, right? Maybe you need that one guy to really bolster everything, then okay, maybe you make a play like that. But when you're in a spot where you need multiple positions covered, even help on the line, if you invest all your money into a guy like that, you're not really going to be able to get a lot of quality to cover that, to cover those spots. So that's something that some of these Cheerio head fans don't think about. Just because you're getting a big name, is it ultimately making you better when you're in a spot where you need multiple positions figured out and situated?
Right.
I think the Steelers did a pretty solid job this offseason figuring that out. And I don't think they're quite done. I still think they'll make a couple more moves before the draft.
I do too. I think there's a couple of moves to be made.
Yeah, exactly, Aquatic. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that, the draft still needs to happen too.
Yeah, it does.
I wouldn't be surprised that after the draft, there's still moves to be made. I mean, you're going to have players that don't want to end up like Mitch Trubisky, where they didn't get picked up right away, or they went to a team that was position hungry and didn't realize that also meant that they were going to look in the draft as well. and you were going to be out of a job. You know, I feel that maybe perhaps there's going to be some players, especially some that are up there in their career, that are going to wait until after the draft, and that way they can go to a team that's going to utilize them versus a team that's going to replace them. And so, it's early. It's very early in the season.
It is. Oh, definitely.
And
even over the summer, there's guys that get cut all the time.
Right, exactly. And so, who knows? I mean, there's still cap casualties that need to be done by other teams, that are going to be done by other teams. You know, we'll see some more moves. You know, I think they talked about a safety out of Tennessee who's waiting to get cut, possibly, or he's looking to get out of there. We'll see. We'll see. But before we let everybody go, because we're getting kind of late and long in the tooth here, do you have any final words, and let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah. So, what I'm going to say is that I remember early in the Steelers, kind of like the beginning of free agency, where a handful of fans were wondering, okay, when the Steelers can do something, blah, blah, blah. And then they signed Patrick Peterson. One thing that was actually kind of something I thought about yesterday was like, all the Steelers signings, there were never like rumors leading up to that.
Right.
They were all signings that really nobody even really kind of put out there. Because you know how like a lot of times you'll have free agents out there that will like kind of be linked to some teams, right? Really, everybody Steelers signed, like there was really none of that.
Well, I'd heard some rumbling about Patrick Peterson, but I didn't believe it.
But you get my point, though. Even with like,
it wasn't a lot. It was, I think it was
everything.
just one guy said. And I can't
like I remember when
who
Miles
it
Jack's
was.
free agent last year. Like every Steeler fan's freaking going crazy to sign him and stuff. Oh, he's linked to Steelers, talking to Steelers, right? So I just didn't really see that this year, which was kind of something that I thought about. But
this year it was Tremaine Edmonds. Everybody was looking.
Yeah, everybody wanted him, and it was interesting when it came out that Orlando Brown was contacted and stuff like that. So I think that kind of, made people really think like, hey, like they might start doing something with the line. Then they obviously signed Samala, and then they etc. Mm-hmm. But I've liked their free agency, man. I think that they've been aggressive. I think they've signed some really quality players that are gonna bring a different view, a different play style to these positions that are needed. Inside linebackers, I think you look at Patrick Peterson. Does it suck Cameron Sutton is gone? Yeah, a lot of people wanted to bring him back, but they were able to utilize that money elsewhere. You're bringing a guy like Patrick Peterson. I don't care that he's 33, man. I don't care that he's going to be 33 this summer or whenever. He still plays at a high level. He can still pick off passes. He's still a guy that you can put out there every Sunday. Right. And I've always said that, look, I don't care if you can still play and if you can still ball at a high level. I don't care how old you are. I really don't. And he's going to be able to bring, and he's another guy, another defensive captain for the Vikings. He's going to bring leadership to that team that has needed it. The line's already taken a jump, and we know that was something that really needed to be focused in on. Don't think they're quite done with it. I think that they'll really top it off in the draft, but I think a lot of people should be excited about that. A couple of the re-signings, we'll see what they do with Terrell Edmonds, but I've been pleased with it. I think we've really kind of seen the influence that Khan and Weidel and everything like that have had. I don't think Colbert would have necessarily made some of these moves that they did. I liked Colbert a lot. Thought he did a lot of good things. He was also kind of like to wait for the cookie to crumble first before he jumped in on some guys. And I like the freshness that we're kind of getting a little bit from the new management because it's needed. It's needed. Aquatic, I appreciate it, man. We appreciate tuning in. But yeah, so hopefully everybody in the chat's been pretty pleased with Steelers offseason. You know, you're not going to please everybody, but I think at the end of the day, the Steelers did get better in certain spots than where they were last year. And I think too, looking at how they finished last year, they recognize, hey, like we're not too quite far off, man. We look how we finished, look really what we did after the bye week, and finishing with 9 wins, game out of the playoff spot. I think that they think themselves too, that they can take the next step forward and try to win the division this season. So we'll see what happens, guys. But you guys can follow me at In Heintz right there in the @ I do my own content as well, aside from when I do stuff with Daniel and Mark on this show. I actually put out a video yesterday, kind of talk about Steelers free agency, only like a 15-minute video. Added my introduction back, which I was very happy about. But so you guys can follow me there, because we also, you guys are new here, we kind of flip back and forth on our channels for our unofficial Steelers podcast. So when we do it next, it'll be on my channel. We'll see if it's going to be Saturday. We'll see if it'll be next week. With the off season, obviously things kind of take a little bit of a step back. So we've kind of really only been doing it one day a week, but we'll put out stuff if we're going to do it Saturday or next Tuesday or anything like that. So feel free, guys, but we appreciate you all tuning in and seeing all you guys who are in, those who are new. We appreciate you and putting your own thoughts in there, guys. We like that you're a part of the show as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, the next time we come on the Unofficial Steelers podcast, we'll be on Nathan's show, In Hindsight. I want to thank every one of you guys in the live chat today. Appreciate y'all. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring that notification bell. We'll see you again next time. With that being said, we're the Unofficial Steelers podcast.